So what makes a politician a breakthrough candidate these days?
I think it's when they're willing to do something improbable even when they're told it's not their turn. Even when they're told, well, yeah, that's fine, you'll be good at some point in this job, but I, the person who hold the power, I'm not giving it up quite yet. And they have to succeed at it. And there are a lot of people who run for office and don't get elected, and that doesn't quite do it.
Well, how important is the way they handle the race issue for their being a breakthrough candidate?
Well, the one thing these guys and some women have in common is that they don't deny that race is an issue. They don't say we've transcended race. They don't buy into that because it's kind of a flawed and easily disproved notion. But they do, I guess some would say, downplay race. They don't make it the driving force of their reason to run for whatever they're running for. They find a way to, if it's possible in this country, neutralize race. And that's what Barack Obama did. That's what all the rest of them do, in a way that doesn't then alienate black voters as well.
Do you think that these politicians, the ones you describe as breakthroughs, appreciate being grouped together? Do they see themselves as members, as people with a common philosophy, the way the preceding generation did?
They do. I have to say, I didn't feel like I had to force the definition on anyone. In fact, more often than not, when I started to tell people what I thought my premise was, they would say, oh, I've been thinking about this. Funny you should ask. And not only the politicians themselves, but the people around them, sometimes their spouses, sometimes people who had who've been involved in politics, white people who have been involved in politics, all said, funny you should mention that. And they all know each other, not necessarily well, but they study each other. A lot of these folks are studying quite closely what happened with Barack Obama and trying to figure out whether it applies in Alabama, say, or other venues.
You use the word sandpaper a lot here, sandpaper moments, sandpaper politics. What do you mean by that?
It's what happens when power shifts. Power concedes nothing without a demand, Malcolm X said, and that's exactly what happened here. In so many cases, in order for these elected officials to break through, they had to say, I'm going to take that. Julian Bond once said that to some young people who were complaining that they didn't think they got enough prominence at a civil rights march in 1993. And he said to them, if you perceive I have something that you want, it's your job to snatch it from me. And that's what these breakthrough politicians have to do. A handy way to look at it is to look at the Congressional Black Caucus. Many of them are in office because they come from districts which are carved out specifically because of legal advances that allow them to redistrict to help them get elected, black districts. So many of these breakthrough candidates are breaking through in diverse areas. And so they're taking advantage of the laws that were passed, Voting Rights Act and all sorts of things that were passed to allow them, public accommodations law, to get where they get. But then they move past it. They're no longer protesting. They're not sitting at lunch counters. They're taking the next step beyond the legal gains.
Although they are, in many cases, running against that earlier generation of black politicians.
Yeah, those are the ones from whom you have to snatch the baton instead of having them give it up.
Now, Colin Powell decided not to run for president in 1996. Do you think that race was a factor in that decision?
He says it was. He actually said an interesting thing that his white friends would say, you've got to run, and his black friends would say, they're not going to let a colored guy have this job. And his wife actually thought and felt strongly at that time that it would not be safe yet for a black man to run in such a high-profile position.
And he offered the objections of his wife, the concerns of his wife, as a good reason for not running. So what happened in the intervening 12 years?
Well, part of it is the right person has to come along. Colin Powell really didn't have the fire in his belly to be president, to run for president. It takes a lot to be able to do that. And it took a while. In the interim, before Colin Powell had run, we had seen Jesse Jackson run twice. He had fire in his belly, but of a different sort. And then it took a Barack Obama or someone improbable to just break through the clutter.